welcome to this episode of Avatar Face to Face. I'm your host, Jewel Kinch-Thomas, and here at Avatar, we want to bring you all of the news and information about arts and culture in Westchester and beyond. We hope you enjoy the show today. Thank you very much for being with us. Today we have on the show my partner, in G&J Productions. He is a jazz writer and a jazz producer. Please welcome to the show, Greg Thomas.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
All right. And we're going to talk today about some of the wonderful events that are going to be coming up through G&J Productions.
Yes.
And you're going to share some of those with us. And they're going to be happening in the village of Harlem.
That's right.
That's right. But before we go there, let's talk a little bit about your background. You have been steeped in jazz and jazz focused and centered for more than a quarter of a century.
That's right.
How did it all begin for you?
How did it all begin? Wow. Well, I guess my love of jazz, it starts with your parents. Both my mother and father had jazz in their record collections. I remember my father having Cannonball Adderley in his collection.
Okay.
My mom had Stanley Turrentine and Wes Montgomery and people like that. But the flame really got lit when I was in high school. I heard the Tottenville High School stage band. Tottenville High School is in Staten Island.
Okay.
And I was there with Mason Nash, who was a childhood friend of mine. And we heard this live band. And the power of a live stage band or big band, it really affected us as teenagers. And after seeing this group, he says, I used to play the guitar, so I'm going to pick the guitar up.
Okay.
And I said, I got to pick something up. So I actually took home a Bundy alto saxophone, started to learn how to play, came back to school and into certain bands, the concert band. Eventually, I was able to, in my senior year, join the stage band and play alto saxophone in that band and play in the symphonic band. So it started out with me listening to the music, immersing myself in the music. I would come home from school, actually get up in the morning listening to WRVR, you know, and then eventually WBGO. I would come home and listen to it. I mean, I felt good, I would listen to it. I felt bad or sad, I would listen to it. So jazz became really the soundtrack of my life. And my love of the music has persisted from that time. I minored in music at Hamilton College in Central New York, played in a small jazz band as well as the college jazz band, where I had an epiphanous experience.
With?
Clark Terry.
Oh, yes.
The great Clark Terry, who known for his innovative, or should I say stylistically unique trumpet playing and his mumbles form of scatting. Back in 1984, he came to the Hamilton College campus, and he was brought by the big band director at the time. And because of my love of the music, he had me and a few other of the band members to go to a dinner with Mr. Terry before we played.
Okay.
I'm sitting next to Mr. Terry, and I'm like this. And
next to a master.
Absolutely. And he said, oh, well, Gregory, so and so and so. And he just made me feel at ease. And when we played in the college chapel, I stood next to this master, and I felt like it was, I guess in martial arts or in certain spiritual arts, they call it transmission. I felt that his sound was like enfolding me, all around me, you know, and it was an incredible experience that actually changed my perception of sound itself. And when I began to play from that point, I automatically projected more. And played a little bit more mature just by virtue of being next to a master.
Wow. Powerful experience for a young man.
Absolutely.
Just starting out really in the whole music sphere.
Yes.
So you moved into writing.
Yes.
Very early.
Yes.
And what precipitated that?
Well, my early 20s, you know, I I decided early on that I wasn't going to try to be a professional musician. I
Okay.
started playing at 15. Some can do that and actually do it. I knew the level that I would want to be at to be able to do it professionally, and I also had other interests. So I followed some of those other interests while continuing to play on the side, but mainly to listen, and eventually, when I was around, I guess, 28, to start to write about the music. So my love and passion for the music in terms of playing transferred to me actually writing about the music. So I wrote for a publication called Urban Profile magazine, which was launched by Keith Clinkscales and Lynn Burnett. Lynn Burnett now has Uptown magazine, and they work together on Vibe magazine. This is all after Urban Profile. And I wrote a piece. My very first piece was why black folks need to listen to jazz or appreciate jazz.
Okay, so that's a beautiful segue, because my next question to you was, why was it important for you to write about the music? What was it that you were trying to share with other people?
That's the operative word, share.
Okay.
My love, my deep passion for the music, I wanted to share it with others. I grew up in the church, Baptist, well, really Methodist, AME on my father's side, and Pentecostal on my mother's side. So there was, I guess, some proselytizing that may have been a motivation just to share and get people to hopefully appreciate it as much as I did, but just to expose them to what I knew and felt were the riches on so many levels of this music, emotionally, culturally, even intellectually. I read other writers who were very, very involved in jazz music, not only in terms of being a jazz critic, but people like Ralph Ellison, author of Invisible Man, who's a great essayist about the music. Albert Murray, author of books like The Omni American, The Stomp in the Blues, The Hero in the Blues, and other works, where they talked about the role of jazz within Black American culture and within American culture, and how it related on those levels, how it was a part of a dynamic within the black community in particular, the Black American community most particularly, where, for example, the blues. Some people think of the blues as just a lament, you know, resignation or sadness. But they, particularly Murray, talks about the blues as actually a response to what he called the blues as such. So blues music, when you play it, when you express yourself in that form in a communal setting, it actually allows you to stomp the blues, to temporarily hold what he calls the blue devils of nada at bay.
So then you can, what, move out of that blues realm? You can...
Well, you can temporarily, because the idea is that, look, we live in a world in which, you know, some tragedy, some sadness, no human being is going to exist without going through heartbreak. So that's going to be a part of life. But you can, through not only blues music, but through a whole cultural dynamic that allows you to affirm life in the midst of hard times. That's what black folks had to do. Now, within an American context, they relate jazz and the blues to American democracy, to the dynamic between the individual and the group. And to the necessity to improvise in order to advance yourself individually and as a group. And so that the music in action becomes a representation of the culture, and it becomes a model for what the ideals of the nation actually are.
So that's an interesting model then, in terms of you moving forward from your writing career now into producing, because now you want to take it from off the page and you want to actually put some artists on a stage and say, okay, experience this.
Absolutely.
All right. So talk a little bit about G&J Productions and what that is for you in terms of expanding awareness of the music.
That was a great segue. Good segue.
You like that?
I like that.
Okay.
But first, I do want to mention, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm currently the jazz columnist for the New York Daily News.
Absolutely.
Where every Sunday in the Your New York section, they can see my work.
Okay, wonderful. And we hope people have a chance to check that out, because I've read most all of them myself, and I will say that there are some fantastic articles.
You're biased.
Probably.
But thank you, thank you. Well, the transition, I would say it's a continuum.
Okay.
From playing the music early on to immersing myself in reading about the history of the music, the culture surrounding music, doing some graduate work at NYU where I studied literature and anthropology, but always found in history a way to connect it back to the music. So from that to writing about the music to actually now presenting the music, where through G&J Productions, our production company, we want to present this music in a fashion that we feel is on the level that it actually is. So when I say that, I mean that jazz has elements of the down home, the earthy, but it's also very sophisticated and cosmopolitan. So we are initiating and launching a series at a venue that has those same elements.
Okay. And that venue is?
Ginny Supper Club.
Okay.
In Harlem.
Excellent. I think we might have a couple of clips, photos rather, of Ginny's.
Okay, so very good.
Show folks.
And it's on 125th Street, I'm sorry, on Lenox Avenue between 125th and 126th Street.
Right.
You see the big Red Rooster awning. The Red Rooster was a speakeasy back in the day.
Okay.
And so Marcus Samuelson, pretty famous chef and now restaurateur, he launched the Red Rooster as his own dream restaurant after going through his apprenticeship. You know, at Aquavie is the name of the restaurant, where I think at the age of 23 or 24, he was the first chef that in the New York Times got a 3-star rating at that age.
Okay.
So he's Ethiopian, grew up in Sweden, and so downstairs from the Red Rooster is this beautiful supper club that they have created, you know, with candles on the table, has a bar.
Wonderful ambiance down there.
Warm.
Yes.
And so it was a perfect place, we felt, to bring this music. I mean, we have deep connections in the music. Myself, through my writing and through being involved in the music.
Right. We should also mention that you have produced at the Jazz Museum in Harlem for several years.
Yes.
Their Harlem Speak series.
Right. Their National Jazz Museum in Harlem, for which Lawrence Schoenberg was executive director. He's now artistic director, and Christian McBride artistic director, if I'm not mistaken. I was the co-producer of their Harlem Speaks interview series, where every 2 weeks there was a person, artist or someone involved in the music, who we would interview, a long form interview, you know, over a 2-hour period, where we go into depth about their past, their history, their career, and archive it for the museum. So yes, I did that for a number of years, about 8 years. So that was a foundation for some of the production experience that we're now taking to a level of actually presenting performance at Ginny's Supper Club.
So the performance series at Ginny's is, well, by the time this airs, it will have started the week prior.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the very first, when they see this, was Bobby Sanabria and Quarteto Ache, or Ache. And Bobby Sanabria is a great drummer who has 2 Grammy nominations. By the time folks see this, they will know whether or not he won either one of those Grammy nominations. He has a new recording called Multiverse, and that recording has an arrangement of a tribute to Duke Ellington. That was one of the nominations that he received. So Bobby himself is notable because he's an educator. He's a small group leader, Quartetto Ashe, as well as a big band leader. And this event is notable because it's the launch of one of several series we will be doing there. This one is called Jazz Plus.
Okay, and what does Jazz Plus represent?
Jazz Plus is a term that I have used in relation to some of my radio work on WVOX, and that we have used in some of the past events that we've done. And basically the concept is that jazz is at the center, but you add other forms of music, other styles. So you can have jazz plus classical, jazz plus gospel, jazz plus R&B. In this case, it's jazz plus Latin.
All right.
And so what made that event extra special is that 91-year-old Grand Master of Congas, Candido, was a special guest. And he's an NEA jazz master. Candido was the first artist. He was part of a wave of conga masters who came from Cuba. And he was the first to play multiple congas, tune them. And he played with everyone from Billy Taylor to Duke Ellington, Machito, Tito Puente, Tony Bennett. And so to have him as a part of our very first event was just phenomenal.
Right. Now, Jazz Plus is one of the series.
Yes.
Then coming up later in February will be the Jazz Masters.
Yes.
Okay.
From February 21st to the 23rd, the Benny Golson Quartet. And Benny Golson is someone, he's 84, just as spry and so erudite. He's down to earth, but he is so smart. I remember one time I had the honor of meeting Quincy Jones. I went to a private Jazz Foundation of America event in the Time Warner building. And I was talking to and met and talked to Quincy Jones, and I mentioned Mr. Golson to him. He said they used to live in the same building together, and he started talking about Benny Golson's vocabulary.
I know.
When he
I've
sent
seen some of the emails.
when he sent you an email, Mr.
It's
Golson,
like reading prose.
oh my goodness, I tell you. So, and that relates to, you know, who he is and the level of his playing as a saxophonist. He's one of the greatest living jazz composers, with songs such as Blues March, which he debuted when he was playing with Art Blakey in the Jazz Messengers in the late 50s. Along Came Betty. Ba-boo-da-bee-da-doo. You have Stablemates, which was recorded first by Miles Davis. I Remember Clifford, a tribute to Clifford Brown.
Right. And didn't he most famously do the themes for MASH and...
Well, he did some writing for MASH. I think it was Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible,
The
yes.
Cosby Show.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And he's also famous for a song that I think... actually, what I did, the tune that I hummed wasn't Along Came Betty. That was actually... Killer Joe.
Oh, fabulous segue, because we have a clip of Benny Golson. Do you want to tell us exactly when this happened?
Absolutely. This was a show that Ramsey Lewis was the host of, that came on Channel 13 several years ago. And he would have on the same instrumentalists, so he would have on trumpeters. In this case, he had on saxophonists, and he had Benny Golson as a guest. And Killer Joe is a song that I think it was in 1969 on a Quincy Jones recording. With Grady Tate on drums, Freddie Hubbard on trumpet. And it's really famous. And I think that folks who of a certain generation will probably recognize this song.
All right, here we go. Benny Golson and Killer Joe. Yes, indeed. That was Benny Golson playing Killer Joe. And Greg, you mentioned that Benny is going to be part of the Jazz Master series. Just
Yes.
for anyone who is not
Oh,
clear.
absolutely. We have programming themes. So I mentioned Jazz Plus,
Right.
but this is the Jazz Master series,
Okay.
where we have artists who at the very highest levels of the jazz idiom who will be presented. So Benny Golson is an NEA jazz master. He's one of the greatest composers. He's a unique stylist as a saxophonist.
Okay.
And he will be playing with some other great musicians, and one in particular I'm happy to announce. But let me tell you, the main members of his group, they'll be there. Mike Ladon on piano, fabulous pianist who was musical director for Milt Jackson and played with so many of the greats. Carl Allen on drums, who is the director of the Juilliard Jazz Program.
Right.
And on bass, Ron Carter.
Now that's exciting.
A living
exciting.
legend, Ron Carter,
Right.
who was with Miles Davis's famous second great quintet in the 60s,
Right.
and who, is probably, you would hate to say the greatest living, but he's an NEA jazz master, and he's undoubtedly one of the greatest living bassists in the world. And he's going to be, so it's going to be two NEA jazz masters as a part of the very first Jazz Master series at Ginny Supper Club.
Okay, sounds like
Yes.
it's going to be an exceptional evening of music that we would
Well, there's actually
encourage.
3 evenings.
3 evenings, okay? So
From the
why don't you
20s,
tell us? Yes.
From the 21st of February to the 23rd, Thursday through Saturday,
Okay.
8 and 10 p.m. sets,
All right.
and it's I think it's going to be phenomenal. I mean, it's no question.
We need to give folks contact information
Oh,
so
absolutely.
that they can get some more details.
Yes, they can get more details by going to GinnySupperClub.com. That's GinnySupperClub.com.
Okay. GinnySupperClub.com.
And also a
right.
phone number, 212-421-3821.
3821.
Right.
Yes, let's get that again.
212-421-3821.
Okay. And I think before we close out today, I want to find out from you why it's important to present these artists in Harlem.
Absolutely. I mean, Harlem is a cradle for the development of the music from the early part of the jazz's existence. Stride piano, the birth of bebop. And it was a cradle where so many of the developments and so many of the great artists came. It's like so many artists that I've interviewed over the years for both the Daily News, for the Jazz Museum in Harlem,
Right.
Harlem Speaks series. They say New York is the place that you had to come.
That's
and
it.
Harlem, being what it is in relation to New York City and being the cultural capital, as they say, of Black America, is crucial that we have this level of jazz programming in Harlem.
Thank you so much for being here today to
Thank you.
share this information
Thank
about
you.
Ginny Supper Club,
Yes.
G&J Productions, and these fabulous cultural events that are coming up very soon. We want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we want to encourage you to support this music and to support the artists and to take a look at what's happening at Ginny Supper Club and be part of that scene. And as we always say, the dream is in the mind of the believer and in the hands of the doer. And you're not given that dream unless you're given the power to make it happen. Have a wonderful week.